Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Foot in Us podcast. Just watched a very Arsenal performance. Actually, Mikel Arteta's team is a lot of things that sometimes I think we miss, or those of us who support Arsenal, and definitely those who don't support Arsenal. This team is well coached. This team is physical. This team and performs best when they're physically fresh. They tacticals, who think about the game, and I think sometimes to their detriment. I think they are too respectful to their opponent. I think I think Arsenal can play with a bit more arrogance and swagger. And that's kind of like been my not frustration, but like that's kind of what I've been hoping to see from this team. Didn't see swagger and arrogance today. I think I saw more of what Ateta's team is, which is we come, we don't give you a lot going the other way. We try to play in your space. We break the game open with a set piece. We break the game open again with another set piece in terms of like getting a 2-0 lead, and then you play from there. And I think when Arsenal continue to play after getting the game that the goal that opens the game up, they're a very difficult team. The problem is for Arsenal in recent times, I think teams understand that if you don't provoke Arsenal and just go for them, they usually will keep things civil with you. They're not going to force the issue with you. and try to annihilate you. Teams understand. I just listened to the Leeds coach. He said something that I think it's not going to be breaking news to anybody, but it's so refreshing to hear an opponent coach. Of course, after conceding 4-0, you have to kind of admit to certain things. But Daniel Farca was saying that from having to chase the game when they went 2-0 down, they then had to go to a back four and kind of add more offensive players. And by doing that, it allowed our attacking players space to play into, which then you see the goal for Gyökeres and you see the goal for Jesus. And Odegaard starts to look a little bit nice because he comes on late in the game. This is just me just sharing here an overview of kind of like my thoughts on Arsenal, because especially when I try not to record usually straight after the game. I'm recording now about an hour or so after the game, half time into the Chelsea game. Chelsea 2-1 down after an hour against West Ham at home. So my thoughts, I'm just, I guess, doing a bit of a disclaimer thing here that, like, I usually will record a day after the game, sometimes two, because I'd like to rewatch an Arsenal game before reacting to it. However, today I'm going straight in because I missed I missed an opportunity to record behind the Champions League games and whatnot. But I'll tie a few things around the Champions League game in this episode. So, with that out the way, I just want to say this performance is not very different from what we've been seeing from Arsenal. The result is different. The ball went in, and and I'm trying to not get too far carried away about my feelings about this win. And I'm very happy about the win. Don't get me wrong, but I can't remember too many things that Arsenal did in that first half outside of getting some really good chances, by the way, from corners. We Leeds could not have solutions. I remember even one that didn't go in where Noni plays it deep to the back post and Gyökeres heads it back across. Um, Gyökeres could have probably done better when he was played through. But we're not a team that's sexy. Okay, I'm just going to close the whole my overview on Arsenal, because those of you who've listened to me many times before, you know how I feel about this team. I've accepted now that Arsenal is not going to be swashbuckling, sexy football Arsenal under Arteta, at least maybe until we win something. And then maybe when he starts winning, he does kind of ease up a little bit with the science and forensic way of doing football. But right now, what he's doing works. And I said it last week after my frustrated watch of the Manchester United game. Arteta's coaching and coaching template and football blueprint, it works. It will give you proximity to good results and gives you proximity to good trophies and things like that. But to get over the line, that's where I think, because the closer you get to finishing at the top, the higher level of coaching, the higher level of talent you're going to face. And I am yet to see us get over the line with him, except for when we had, again, the one time we did get over the line, we had some heroic performances from Aubameyang, right, in the semifinal and the final of the FA Cup that year we won it. And Pepe became a 72 million pound player for a couple of those games. So I'm accepting as an Arsenal fan that Arsenal are not going to be, a team that pleases people, Arsenal fans and everyone else alike, in terms of how sexy they look to the eye. It's not pretty football. We have pretty players who would probably play pretty football with a different manager. But the manager we have is a lab man, he's a scientist, and he's big on getting probabilities, working the probabilities, working the inches. So that's what we have, and that's his gift. And let's see if it gets him over the line. I hope it does because I want anyone who works for Arsenal or who's for Arsenal to win. Right? I want Arteta to win. I'm not a manager out, manager in person. I just want Arsenal succeeding, and yes, it's not pretty, but it's working, guys. It's working, and it didn't work for a few weeks, but I think you could also probably go back and watch those games, which I did, and see opportunities where players could have taken a bit more responsibility for winning the games. And this is where I think Ateta needs to be now. Before I get into this game a little bit more, I just wanted to say that because I think too much of responsibility is placed on the manager, and I think yes, that's he's the boss, and it needs to the buck stops with him. However, player responsibility, in my view, is a thing too, and I think these players at Arsenal are talented enough to and mature enough now, and a lot of them hitting prime age or are in their prime age, so they need to, I think, as men, stand up and problem solve within the game. The manager can do what he can, but he's not the one on the field playing the game. So at this point, I'm not interested in hearing people saying Ateta needs to let the handbrake off, even though yes, he can always get better at that. Deciding when to get out of the way and let the players lead, especially in game situations. But I think it's too much of an easy way out for the players for me to just focus on the manager. I think this manager is somebody who I enjoy listening to talk about football. He's usually very honest in his assessment of games, even though I don't agree with with some of the stuff he says. I think he's being genuinely honest and not trying to play games. And I also think just as much as I may not always agree with his decisions around lineups or setups, I think he is doing a good job. He's doing an incredibly good job considering this is his first time ever leading a professional outfit, and he has done wonders for this football club. And now I think all of us, even those of Arsenal fans who don't maybe want him to be the manager, I think everybody wants him to succeed. It looks like West Ham have surrendered a 2-goal lead against Chelsea. Kukurea is celebrating. It's 2-2 now. So Arsenal need to figure out a way, and today was a step. And I liked that Ateta responded first in his press conferences with confidence and positivity. And then coming to this game, I was hoping to see something different, a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2. He got close to a 4-4-2, I think. And I say this because Havertz was not playing like Martin Odegaard, coming deep and collecting balls and whatever. He was a bit closer to Gyökeres in what looked like a 4-2-3-1, maybe even 4-4-1-1 or 4-4-2, depending what it is you saw from watching the game. I think Havertz working a little bit closer to Gyökeres is better for the striker. And Leeds playing with three centre backs, I think again, I think it was smart to have Havertz there, and Havertz is another target to hit. I think they're just still checking the goal for a possible foul. Man, please let it be not be a goal. Anyway, so I think Mikel playing Havertz, who is more strikery than any one of our other number tens. Maybe Merino is the other one. It was a good idea for them to kind of try to give Leeds a different look, because we've been playing with basically a solitary striker and wingers who are way outside wide, and then the gap between the midfield and sometimes our forward line is not always one that we manage really well. And it looked to me on this day there were partnerships throughout the middle. The two centre backs working together as always, the two central midfielders not doing too much box to boxing. I think Rice stayed a bit at home and Zubimendi too. I think they worked together a little bit closer because Leeds were playing a 3-4-2-1, so they were not really outnumbered in midfield, so to speak, because it was a two, versus two. And I like the Arsenal two versus the Leeds two in terms of strength and winning that battle. And then Kai playing deep a little bit kind of gave us two and a half in midfield, I guess. But what was more important in my view was his proximity to Gyökeres. He allowed Arsenal to have another target to hit, like I said earlier, but at the same time, it also helped Gyökeres not to be so isolated, playing against three centre backs. And Kai being back is good for Arsenal because I think it gives us verticality on the ground playing, and it gives us verticality to escape the press by going over because the ball does not stick to Gyökeres. And if you're not playing Marino, you need another person to hit as a target. Saka can be a target, but that means you're going wide to come back in first. In second, sorry. Jesus, I don't know if you want him being a target all the time, but like what I'm happy about in this game was the response to Saka's injury was to put Noni, and Noni had himself a game. Noni Madueke is a player that a lot of Arsenal fans find themselves on a very extreme side of wanting to defend him and like praise him a bit too much. And then there are some who are doing the opposite, just jump on him and talk negatively as if that's going to help as well about him. I think the kid is definitely a raw talent. He's not a refined player, but there's a lot in there to work with. I think he's a bit of a coach's dream in a way because I think if you can get Nani to polish a little bit the edges of his game, he is going to be one of the best wingers in England at least, but I would say in Europe. He has the potential physically. He has the physical tools to be one of the better wingers in all of Europe. He has what in the early stages of seeing and hearing things about him is that he's willing to be coached. I didn't know him from an attitude side. I thought maybe he might be a bit of a Wilfred Zaha initially because of the style of play and his kind of like one-on-one dual monster type play, right? He is a one-on-one dual monster, and I think Arsenal needs one of those, to be honest, because there's too many shy guys or too many guys who are happy to pass the ball to the next player. And so because of that, I'm never going to go too hard on this kid, even when he has an inconsistent performance in the same day. Like he can do, some people are saying he can do something great and horrible within 3 seconds, you know. But for me, I'm choosing to focus on this player for now, on the things that he gives, rather than the things that he can't give. He gives you verticality, he gives you penetration, he creates panic for defenders, and he changes pictures against because Arsenal plays a lot slower than most teams, and so because of that, Arsenal faces too many defenses that are set. And if you have a player like Noni who's prepared to run with the ball, that changes pictures, that destabilizes that set defense. So I'm having that. And today he had himself a man of the match performance. I think it was deserved. I think he's only had, like before the start of this game, he had 500 and something minutes in the Premier League. He does need more minutes. I understand that he did get injured, but he's a player that can offer us a lot on both sides. I would even be curious to see if he played on his strong foot in some games with Martinelli playing on his strong foot on the other side, because like them two kids, like they are different to a lot of the rest. They don't look and work like the rest of the team. They're not the cleanest on the ball, but they will terrify defenders with their speed, especially if Martinelli can stop kind of playing within himself when he feels like he needs to respect the defender that he's playing against. If he approached defenders with the level of disrespect that he can sometimes take some of the defenders that are clearly below his level, I hope somehow he finds that level of arrogance in his play, and maybe him and Noni can kind of work together on this. I don't know. But I'm happy for Noni. Took his chances with both hands today in terms of like the chance to play. He was involved in the first two goals for Arsenal. Good crosses for both. He had a few other crosses that could have led to goals. And yeah, did a really good job deputizing for Bukayo, but he's his own player, and I think we should start looking at him as such, and not comparing him to Saka, because whenever we do that, we're probably always going to be hating certain things about him depending on where you are with Saka. If you think Saka is a great player, which a lot of Arsenal fans do think, I think Noni then is gonna always be falling short. But if you can find a way to look at him for what he gives, I think Noni is gonna be a very good player for this club, especially if he continues to develop. So I'm happy for him. The other thing I was happy for, obviously, was Kai Havertz. I talked about him, how he helped Gyökeres, and how he helped us find outlets, because we're playing against strong pressing teams away from home, good runners, good physicality. Kai Havertz is a very good player for those situations. And I'm happy that he got through the game. Hopefully, the body recovers well because we're going to need him, I think. Martin is going through a rough patch, and he's the next guy I'm going to talk about. Odegaard not playing in this game in favor of Kai was the right call. I was worried that Mikel might play Odegaard because he's the captain, and he didn't start midweek, and it's an away game, and it can raise a lot of questions to not play your captain, right? But I'm glad Mikel did not play Odegaard from the start in this game, because Leeds are physical. I was thinking he would play. I was hoping he would play Christian Norgard, but Norgard didn't even make the squad until the late injury to Saka. Because against these physical teams, I do think Christian Norgard has a place in this Arsenal team to get some minutes, you know what I mean, to match the physicality. Because I think in England especially, I think in football overall, but definitely in the Premier League and in the Championship, you need physicality to just to even stand a chance to compete to win the game. You need to be able to match the other team's physicality, and Norgard is underused. And I thought he would play, but when Odegaard came in, he came in a very suitable situation for him, because Leeds at that time were chasing the game. They had gone to a back four. There were more spaces for him to manipulate and do what he can do. He gets himself an assist. Good for him. But I hope we can keep finding little cameo things for him. Like, I know he started and played 57 and 58 in the previous couple of Premier League games, but him coming on with the game being pretty much won, I think he needs more minutes in those situations to build his own confidence, because the guy his confidence seems to be fluctuating. That's what it looks like to me. And I think he needs to play a bit higher at this point in the season. I don't think playing Odegaard the way, I know Arteta was asked about this in the pre-match conference, that is Odegaard stepping deep as a result of instruction or a result of other people not doing their job, so he needs to go in and help. And Arteta was, no, I prefer it when he's going more further forward. But at the same time, Arteta said, that's in his nature, and so Arteta chooses to respect the player's autonomy and kind of give the player the freedom to make the reads, which kind of, I think, doesn't go with what most Arsenal fans that I talk to believe about Arteta being, including myself, about Arteta being a controlling manager, right? Like, he wants players to be instructed to the T. And so, like, when we see things on the pitch, the first thing we go to is that's instruction. But it was interesting actually because I didn't think Ateta would answer that question, and definitely I didn't think he would answer it that way. That no, it's Odegaard's nature to go deep and do the things that he does. So I think Odegaard, yeah, needs to sometimes let other people have the ball and stay away and get out of the way and stay there doing number 10 things if he is the number 10. I do like him in build up, but if you have Rice and Zubimendi in the same space, I prefer actually of the three of them. If I'm going to choose who I want in the final third, Declan Rice, Odegaard, and Zubimendi, I'd rather Martin Odegaard be the most advanced of the three. But they've been MacGyvering and doing, kind of like a collaboration thing, sharing minutes on who's the attacking third, who's doing the middle third, and who's doing the first phase build up third. So I'm happy for Odegaard. I'm happy that he got to play in kind of, you know, less pressure minutes and be able to play offensive football that we can enjoy and create a goal for Gabriel Jesus, who did well himself to get the goal. But Martinelli coming on, playing on the right wing, he's probably going to end up playing more on the right wing. Hopefully that means more minutes for both Martinelli behind or sharing with Noni on the right wing, and minutes for Eze, hopefully sharing the responsibility on the left wing with Leo. Because if you could do that, do time shares. Leo shares with Eze on the left wing, Martinelli shares with Noni on the right wing, and Odegaard shares with Kai behind the striker. And then Jesus shares with Gyökeres. Then you have some kind of a formula there in a 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-1-1 or 4-4-2, where you can use players and give them good minutes along the way. And then, if you want to rest one of Zubimendi or Rice, you can play Norgard next to one of them. Like the players now coming back to health. I think that's really helpful for Arsenal. I think now it's a matter of like, I think Noni was a good example of like when players have a chance to play and they know they're going to be playing. We have good enough players at Arsenal now that it should be not so difficult to give people minutes. It should be, of course, planned and like form should matter in these things. But I think players who are in the squad should feel like they can be involved. You know, I think they are not feeling involved a lot of the time, and that's just like when I look at the minutes. Sorry, let me just come back. When I look at the minutes of players at Arsenal, the most used players. So these are statistics from StatMuse, and let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Like, if you look at this here, this is just Premier League minutes, not including Carabao Cups and Champions League, which a lot of these guys already play a lot of minutes there. So like, no, sorry, that's the Champions League minutes. Let me do the Premier League minutes. Zubimendi and Rice are the highest infield players, followed by Timber. There's like they're all over 1900 minutes in the Premier League. And then Saliba, even though he and Gabriel have been injured, whenever they've been available, they also quite high in minutes. Saka was injured early in the season, and since he's been back, he's played a lot of minutes again. Gyökeres is the other one. Outside of injury, he played a lot of minutes, right? And Leo playing more minutes in the last 3 or so months. But then, if you start to notice here, he hasn't been used a lot. Martin Odegaard, Mikel Merino, I think he might be injured or something because he was not in the squad today, even though he didn't play in the midweek. Maybe something happened in training or he was sick or something. I don't know. Eze, under 1,000 minutes in the Premier League. Noni, 643 minutes in the Premier League. That's not, you know what I mean? Martinelli, Mosquera, of course, injury, and he's a backup. White can probably get up there in minutes too, especially when you have Timber at 1900 minutes. So I think we have now players who are available that we can use. Miles, his minutes are very, very low compared to what they were last year in the Premier League. Jesus, of course, he's been injured, so we understand that. And Kai Havertz the same. But Nogard has been fit for most of the season. Look at his minutes in the Premier League. It's 33 minutes in the Premier League. That's just not, for me, this lot of players here, there's too many good players who have under 1,000 minutes in the Premier League after playing 24 games. That is, to me, and maybe Ateta knows better than me, of course. I mean, not maybe, he definitely knows better than me about who deserves minutes and whatever. He's the coach. But as a fan, I do worry about like the underutilization of some of these squad players because things like Saka getting injured can happen. You know what I mean? Like, so because of that, for me, I think we need to be more willing to give people minutes. And I know Ateta has done a better job this year of rotating the team. However, it's quite interesting how players get rested and then they get injured the week after. So I wonder if maybe sometimes when we're resting players, we're resting them because they're already kind of shafted and they're just done, right? I know it's not an exact science. I know it's not easy. So I'm not gonna, you know, go too hard on the player management. They have a lot more medical information about the players, Ateta and his staff. They have all of that. So I'm just speaking as a fan, especially when I look at data and I look, the number of guys who have minutes that are lower than 1,000 or lower than 800 minutes. To me, that's too much. That number is too high. I think we can do better than having, like Rice and Zubimendi. I know we don't have a like for like replacement for them, but the fact that these guys have played this many minutes and Norgard has only played 33 minutes in the Premier League, that to me is problematic. And what happens when one of them gets injured? Or they don't get injured, but you get as many performance like you got against Manchester United because you're using him all the time. So that's just the one little thing that I worry about when it comes to my manager. I think Arteta is one of the best managers out there, top five, maybe even when it comes to X's and O's. But I'm always hoping that he finds different ways to utilize and lean into the squad that he has. Because this time around, the level of the squad is as high as I've ever seen it at Arsenal. Even when Arsene Wenger was winning in those first 7 years, I don't think he had from 1 to 22 the level of player that Arsenal have in these days in today's current squad. So because of that, I think we need to be more willing to use these players. Fair play to Martinelli coming on, gets an assist. Just want to shout out to him. It's good that also, like, another cool thing about this game is that yes, open play goals were not the first two, but we did get open play goals for the third and the fourth, and both of them came from the center forwards. It's the second time in about a space of a week and a bit, 2 weeks maybe, week and a half maybe, that Gyökeres and Jesus have scored in the same game. It happened at Inter. Jesus scored 2 goals. Gyökeres came on to replace him. Gyökeres scored. Today, it could have happened. No, it happened today because obviously Jesus came on to replace Gyökeres, having scored, and Jesus gets himself a goal. Against Kairat, Jesus scored a goal after coming on for Gyökeres, but he was ever so slightly offside. So what I'm saying here is having these guys starting to score goals, Noni getting minutes and getting an assist, Martinelli getting minutes and getting an assist, I think this is going to be very, very helpful for that offensive line, because I know a lot of us Arsenal fans have been worried about the defense, because we had too many games in the month of January that ended 3-2, especially like some of them, more of them being wins than not. And then the last one against Man United was not a win. But I still think sometimes your defense can be helped by your offensive line doing what they need to do, putting threat, scaring opponents. And when our feeling in the front line is getting better, which I think goals always does that for forwards, that will make our defense exponentially better. And that will also help to get over the line when it comes to, like we have a semi-final against Chelsea. Chelsea feeling themselves, new manager. They've just come back to complete a 3-2 win, it seems, against West Ham from 2-0 down. They were 2-0 down at the half, and this looks like now a second half comeback for Chelsea. We're playing them, so they're going to come to the Emirates with belief. We home, we with the older team, with a more experienced team. I don't think we should be fearing a chance to go to Wembley. And I think we should. I like our chances, but I hope the team starts to play like they believe how good they are, especially as we get into the winning time of the season. So I'm gonna stop this one here, but I do hope that you will join me for the next one and the next one and the next one after that. And please, please, my friends, like, hype, subscribe, and all the other stuff that podcasters want us to do. I appreciate your support. Thank you for joining